Ratchet and Clank! Rift Apart. Good game. Wasn't as good as classics, but it's still pretty cool. It was very much still very much Ratchet and Clank. Like, even the voices sounded the same. I don't know if they were. I wouldn't be surprised, because Ratchet's very iconic to PlayStation, to Sony. It's been my... When I see Ratchet, when I think of it, I think of PlayStation / Sony instantly. I mean, you get that kind of similar vibe with Crash and Spyro. But me personally, it's just always been Ratchet. Ever since PS2, it's just been such a fun game for so long. I mean, being able to have that chance to play this today in its newest, most modern, relevant form is just... it's a treat. I've been playing Ratchet since I was in, like, 4th or 5th grade or something. Going commando, playing it at friends' houses. It's just always been there. Like, every game that's come out. There might be 1 or 2 games I never played, but they've done such a great job at kind of pacing their games out throughout time. And every time I was able to get my hands on one, I definitely took it. It's probably not something I kept up with, like, I went out of my way or made it a point to, like, oh, I gotta play every single game, or, like, as soon as they come out, or... But I've played enough of them. I've played a majority of them. I mean, there's been enough, and they're kind of scattered, especially after 3 and all, that I would really kind of have to look back and see what ones I did play or didn't. And even that might not be enough, because it's just been through, like I said, since, like, elementary school. I mean, a lot of those years were so kind of foggy, right? Middle school, high school. But I've at least played one, if not multiple, Ratchet games on the PS2, the PS3, even the PS4 reboot. And now on next gen, it's great. Everything's still there. You got your gold bolts, your ammo crates, your health, your nanotech, your secrets and collectibles and looking around, locations. A lot of the same guns, some new ones. It was really nice. I love it when they implement the older stuff, like all that nostalgia and memories kind of just flood through. It's like, yeah, it's one thing to see Ratchet, obviously, like, duh, he's gonna be there, he's the game, and Clank. But I think the guns is really what kind of carries over. And even seeing older characters, side characters, like, you know, Skid and there's probably a lot in the game that I don't remember, like, oh, this guy might have been in an older game, I don't remember him. It's all kind of spotty. Yeah, the game was fun. Just great collecting bolts. I love the customization. All the different armor sets, the perks that came with the armor sets, the skill trees for the guns. The variety was just insane. And that's what they've always been good at. Like, Insomniac is such a great company, and I know they're mostly known for Ratchet. But even something comparable in a way is the Spider-Man games. I haven't played those myself, but I've seen plenty of gameplay and stuff, and it's just so clean, and there's such good graphics, such quality, and nothing is really out of place. The audio design, the art style, the super clean costumes and suits and stuff, and the particle effects, and obviously this was a next-gen launch title. You got your haptic feedback functionality feature. It's great. It's just a full-on, really fun third-person shooter, big guns, immersive. Well, not really immersive, but just a good experience, a good watch. Everything felt so good and so solid and precise. I really didn't have any trouble with the game. I mean, some of the options were a little weird. And obviously, yeah, it is a next-gen game, especially launch title, right? So, like, you're gonna have, like, kind of over-the-top, do you want this on? Do you want it off? Do you want to change this color? Blah, blah, blah. But I happened to set it up pretty nicely to where it worked out the best for me. Sensitivity, you know, so forth and so on. The only thing I didn't really like, which did come in handy for what this game is, here and there in certain parts, was it wasn't aim assistance. It was just like auto targeting, auto lock. It's kind of weird. It doesn't really. It can affect your gunplay a little bit, but not too bad where you don't really notice it. It's not that bad. It's not super strong like some games can do with, to where you're literally fighting the controls to kind of aim and do what you want. I mean, for the most part, like 95%, you're pretty much in control of what you're trying to do. Although, yeah, it is weird when, well, the guns weren't so bad. That's where you think it'd fall the most. But I think it's the wrench that kind of suffered a little bit there, because you're trying to hit an enemy and instead you might hit like an explosive box next to you, and that's obviously not good. So it even locks onto boxes, which is weird. I mean, you really do gotta be careful, watch your step, be aware of your surroundings. And that's pretty typical, but thankfully I didn't use my wrench a whole lot. And because obviously, like, you want to level up your guns and use your guns and get them all to max level, and it's the normal stuff. There's really nothing necessarily new here, which is good. Some new characters, some slightly different mechanics here and there, but they still had the swing shot. It's still very much somewhat of a platformer. Obviously the biggest change was like the rift kind of stuff. You still got your box breaker. One thing I didn't get, weirdly enough, and I did everything. I got all the bolts, I got all the collectibles. I don't really go out of my way a whole lot for stuff like that, but with this game it was just, you're so used to that hunt and that chase of looking around for those gold bolts, and the environments are so nice. They're very detailed and kind of overwhelming in that way, but looking around, getting those treasures, and most of the time I just don't care about that stuff because a lot of games don't really do it quite the same. Like, oh, I picked up a piece of paper, cool. I do, chasing a big giant gold bolt the size of Ratchet, shiny, pretty. It feels good every single time you get one. It's just this really nice gratification, the super satisfying, like, I don't know, it feels really good. And for me to not do this in a lot of games and to do it here just makes so much sense, because like, I support this game, I like it, I love it, I want more of it. It's like Ratchet hasn't aged a day. Well, literally he hasn't, but like, the games just keep getting better, they keep getting bigger, they're getting, like, yeah, you don't get that nice 2D linear arcadey feel like the old ones. The older games just have more charm. It's just kind of how a lot of older games work. As time goes on, it's more about how much more can they do and how much bigger can they do it, and sometimes that can be kind of bad, but here it worked out great. Cutscenes are cool.
Hey, it's okay. See? Just me.
Rivet?
Shh! Gotta go. Here, it'll help you get home. I designed it to be one size fits all, so it should...
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very pretty. Got that next gen flavor, that style, that performance. Dude, it was like watching a movie. It was really no different than watching the latest, or the only Ratchet and Clank CG movie that's out there. It was just great. They were plenty long, they weren't too long, they weren't too short. Really kept the story going along. Had a good pacing. I think the game took me about a couple days, 2.5 days. It's like 2.5 sittings. Yeah, it took me about 20 something hours to complete, basically. And that's, you know, doing everything. There's a few things I had to retry. It was a pretty easy game. I played on normal. But to be honest, I think I don't play games on hard very often, but this is one of those games that's kind of an exception. I would have done it. But I like the game, I just don't like it that much. I gotta just kind of play and move on. But, you know, standard for the most part is pretty typical, and I'm perfectly fine with that. It's a very well-balanced playthrough. What I was most wanting, if anything, versus the hard mode and all that, was I like the challenge mode. That's when things really get cool. Like, you put so much effort into your guns and using specific ones, and you get biased towards specific guns. You can upgrade them even more. Through the base game, you already get quite a bit of extra customization and little things like that anyway. So I don't really feel like the challenge mode unlocked a whole lot more stuff beyond what you already kind of get. You're pretty spoiled. You get a lot of stuff to just make it more fun as you go along. Got to collect all the armor and have a complete set for the perk bonuses, and but just like with most games, unfortunately, you don't really get a lot of the good stuff until about the end. They do kind of lock some stuff away throughout your progression. Which kind of sucks, because if you're wanting to do more, they do kind of limit you in a way. Just so you don't get too much done too quickly, because like these games have always been pretty fun, but they've always been pretty easy. You know, they really emphasize the whole fun part versus like necessarily it being hard or confusing or complicated, or they just want you to have a good time. And I think they're kind of really good at doing that. There's some games that kind of emphasize that whole thing a little too much, and it really takes away from just, you know, being able to smile and be happy and be like, hey, I had a great time, and there wasn't so much like pain or suffering or just. And I think that's a really important message for a lot of games to kind. This is why Insomniac are as good as they are, dude. They are PlayStation, they are Sony, like that's huge. That's a big deal. I have a lot of respect for studios that do a good job and make good games, and it's not just about this or that, it's about kind of the whole picture and the entirety of kind of their mission and goal and what they live by and their standards, and it's good. Couple more issues, very small issues. Like the problems I had with this game are so small they're barely even worth mentioning, but sometimes you might get stuck. There's so much in the world that like you might get stuck in a rock and you're doing the whole floating animation You might accidentally jump your way out of the map. You can fall a lot. Gravity is not on your side in space games, right? Like I said earlier, the options can be a little muddy, but it's more than easy enough to figure out. You can't really turn the auto-targeting deal off or on or whatever. And a somewhat big one is that they focused a lot on the new characters, Rivet and Kit. And, well, you know, everyone else. Emperor Nefarious and all the creatures you meet along the way and new enemy types or whatever. I don't know. I mean, we start off the game not even technically being Ratchet in a way. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I like the character development and the backstory and getting to know these new characters, and you do start to like them over time and start accepting them. But I think one issue is, like, you know, we're so used to and accustomed to the old stuff and the old characters, and as much as they are still a part of this game, they're just barely in it. And they made so much more room for these newer characters, which worked out fine. It's just Ratchet, my main man, he felt so, like, kind of second priority and secondary and kind of pushed aside, and I think we played as girl Ratchet a lot longer than I would have liked to. I mean, all in all, it was a good mix of the two, switching off, but I wanted more Ratchet. That's why I played this game. It's called Ratchet and Clank, not Rivet and Kit, you know? But yeah, once again, just kind of a small thing, not really anything too, like, game breaking or was like a turn off, or it was still very much everything that I've always kind of been used to. And that's a big thing, is having that experience. And because you gotta really move around, you gotta dodge, duck, dip, dive, like, it's crazy, man. It can get so gnarly. And the thing with difficulty, whether you do easy, hard, normal, that still doesn't really change the fact that, like, if you can't make your shots, if you don't know what to do or how to do it, jumping around, strafing, mobility, dodging, like, that's kind of what you're focusing on, if anything, right? Yes, the more crazy it gets, you know, the more hurt you get. But if at the very least you gotta redo a couple things a couple times, that's about it. The arena's not that bad. There's a battle arena. It was really fun. It's the same thing as every other Ratchet game, so there's nothing really necessarily new here, and that's the only reason why I feel comfortable kind of even mentioning half of these things, is because of the fact that it's all, if you are used to it, you're gonna know exactly what to expect. And before, like, even before I played, I saw a little bit of gameplay, not much, but I knew just from past games experiences, and yes, this is a little different in this case, but I pretty much knew I was going to be expecting about the same thing, so that made me feel a lot more comfortable going in and knowing what to expect. Because some games, depending on the series, they change things up so much where it really just kind of starts to throw you off after a while. Like, dude, what am I doing? Am I playing the same game I thought I was going to play, or is it kind of always going to be different? Is it guaranteed going to be different every single time? All sequels, reboots, remakes, remasters, whatever. So that's another thing to keep in mind. There's a lot to this game. There's a lot of, as complex as everything is as a whole, it is very narrowed down and condensed and simplified. And you really can't beat that when you're looking for just kind of something fun to play and put on and get through. And maybe you do want to replay it, challenge mode, do a harder difficult, whatever you want to do. You really are in control of how you want to approach the game and finish it and continue with it. Like, it was one thing back in the day when I was a kid, like, you know, oh, challenge mode, sounds fun. I got time, I'm not doing anything. You get off school, hang out, stay up all night, weekends. Like, obviously things can kind of change in that kind of way throughout time, but this game to me is really that good. It holds a much higher place than most games that I play do, because I'm kind of switching from one thing to another so often that I don't really get the luxury of having that familiarity too often. So yeah, having it here is kind of like a nice sweet little bonus. Gameplay was fun. Yeah, the gameplay was a good time. The game was funny. It was very good at its comedic relief. Some of the jokes they crack are so they're just too good. The comedy in these Ratchet games, you just can't beat. I'm sorry, but like, I think some games try to be funny, and a lot of time I don't really think they are. Like, it takes either nothing at all in a way, or like it takes a lot for me to actually crack a laugh. Like, I got a very like keen, specific kind of sense of humor. But yeah, yeah, good planets, good map locations. There were some places were a lot easier to navigate than others, like certain planets were like, whether it's verticality or just kind of the way they want you to get around, or because you're dealing with rifts and alternate dimensions, and like it's kind of rough. If you want to just get through the game quick and just do the story, you could probably get this game done really quick. But when you're looking around for stuff, they don't make it easier for you. Like, you have to look around, you have to like actually put in that time and put in the effort and energy to actually give a shit. Which can make the game go on a lot longer than you might want it to be, because when you're playing, it's like, oh, this is cartoony, it's easy, simple, fun. But really, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I mean, obviously, this game's made for all ages, adults, kids, teenagers. So, you're gonna be in for a challenge. It's not like what it's all cracked up to be. And you'll notice that with a lot of games like this, with a very similar cel-shaded kind of style, Spyro Crash for example. The game looks easy, but it's not. I mean, it doesn't take much for games like this to kind of become rage feel. Like, you're getting hit, you're a bunch of cheap shots, you feel like you're getting kind of screwed over a little bit. That will happen. That's almost guaranteed. You gotta be very, you know, you're aiming for a guy, right? But you got something behind you coming up, biting you to pieces, chopping you in half. I mean, it's hard because you want to just pew pew, and you got to be moving constantly. Like, you cannot stand still for a second. You could almost think of it as like you're playing Doom. Like, you gotta move, man. You gotta move. That's part of the fun of it. You're like a ninja, just dodging bullets and Matrix kind of stuff, and you know, it really does become a skill all of its own. A lot of games have that kind of skill gap where whether it's the way you get around or kind of just every little thing, how you strategize your path and your direction. And that's a very big key factor in this game is kind of just adapting to your environment. And the reason why I emphasize a lot of this is because that's part of the general kind of generalization I think you're gonna pick up really quick, especially for a first timer, first Ratchet game. You're gonna really underestimate the game and kind of treat it as this like joke, but it's not. You know, and difficulty aside, if you're, especially when you're in that arena, because here's the thing, certain areas, certain things, certain sequences and they all have like something of a fixed difficulty. The thing with games is there's so many moving pieces that like nothing's ever kind of, it's always teetering in one way or another somehow. So like, yeah, it's not good to be overconfident and cocky and greedy, because it's gonna come back to bite you, literally. And this is just years of Ratchet experience. If I played this game for the first time, I think I would have caught on to a lot of that stuff pretty quickly, because it's not hard to do that. Especially when you're thinking like you're using the latest technology. I mean, there's really no excuse at that point to not kind of get this game down to a T and a science where it needs to be and where you should be. So just kind of a lot of somewhat tips, hints, tricks. Because for everyone it's going to be different kind of deal, like, especially because like Ratchet isn't, when you're thinking PlayStation and stuff, this is a very great game to learn a lot of good things from. It's a game, especially from an early age or whatever, right? Or a first PlayStation player or whatever it may be, to really know the buttons and to... This is one of many games that can teach you a lot about just strafing and mobility and movement and gunplay and shooting and precision and decisions and judgment, choices, options. You know, do you have a good drip? Are you wearing something cool? Is that even a thing in the... Yeah. A lot of stuff to keep in mind. Another cool thing was, and I haven't exactly looked it up, but right off the bat, in my experience, I don't know what it's like for others, but they actually gave me quite a bit of costumes, and they're just purely cosmetic. I didn't get the deluxe edition or any of that. But they looked like armor sets from older games, like Going Commando, Deadlocked. Deadlocked was my favorite, by the way. Because there was just non-stop action shooting. It was just too much fun. Bosses and all that. It's all still really relevant here. There's a couple there's like one boss I actually really liked, but some of the planets I didn't like. But yeah, right off the bat, there's like kind of quite a bit of nostalgia right then and there. I don't know if it knew that I played these past games somehow, like going off of trophies or data or your account. I don't know. And I know that when I played a lot of these older games, obviously not everything was... Maybe I played offline, online, especially when you're thinking PS2. I don't know how it would have known what games I've played and not played, but somehow I think it did. Unless those just right out of the gate default come with your standard edition game. I don't know. But it's almost like the game somehow knew I had experience and it was kind of rewarding me for that, and I really like when games do that. Like Need for Speed is a good example of a game that kind of rewards you for playing all their games. Yakuza, for example. It's kind of nice. It makes the beginning of the game especially a lot nicer to kind of just jump into, and it makes you look forward to the game a little bit more. It's just kind of more bonus points, really. Yeah, I'm glad I played this. This was one of my most anticipated next-gen games, to be honest. And I'm glad I got an opportunity to play it and just have a good time. It was a nice change of pace from what I've been playing. I think it was a good time to get into it and to give it a go. And no regrets. Yeah, Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart.